What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast with Cass, Chris, Shad. What's going on, fellas?
What's good?
What's good? Glad to be back.
Definitely glad to be back. And another week in the NFL, getting a little closer and closer to the NBA. We finally had some. Everybody's getting into training camp in the NBA, but I feel like the biggest news in the NFL outside of the games, we got treated with another trade request yesterday, so we can go ahead and start off and kick off with that. Davante Adams finally has made his request to get out of Las Vegas and depart maybe to the Jets, maybe to the Saints with his the two former quarterbacks that he's played with. But how did you guys feel when you heard the news, and where would you guys like to see him go to if he does get traded?
I mean, that was part of the reason why I picked him last week for the hot seat watch. You could just tell that situation was brewing. And then, of course, after the like post by Antonio Pierce and that whole situation over the weekend, it was like, okay, yeah, this shit is about to come to a head. So I wasn't surprised at all that it happened. You know, it's probably been like that, and I feel like it just got like leaked out at this point. You know, that he kindly requested to go somewhere else. I mean, none of that shit was surprising. Like, you could tell, like, their Raiders, like, it was just the whole organization just feels off right now. I don't really know where or what his value is at this point. It'll be interesting to see, you know, kind of what teams are offering. Of course, the original one was second round pick. I don't think he's worth a second round pick, but, you know, if there is a team like the Jets that have Aaron Rodgers and pretty much does whatever he says, I see them giving the second round pick. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I mean, and I think ultimately that'll probably be the team that kind of outbids everyone else, simply because of where they are right now with Aaron Rodgers and how bad, honestly, that offense looks. A lot of that maybe coaching, maybe play calling, of course. So, but Davante Adams would definitely help them and help that receiver room out. So I want to see the Jets. I don't really know how much it moves the needle ultimately, but I know they think it might move it a lot. So I think the Jets. What you got, Chris?
I mean, like you said, Kaz, I'm not really too shocked about it. I guess I'm shocked about just how they're going about it. I mean, how are you a head coach and doing that? That's kind of weird to me. But
That is weird.
I don't understand. Then you got Davante going on a media tour and just not making it no better. And then you already seen the
well-timed one
happen. Right. But as far as a team, I mean, yeah, you could say the Jets, you know, Aaron Rodgers is a previous quarterback, but I mean, does that help them at all? I mean, they had a pretty bad game this past weekend. And I'm not saying that Davante wouldn't help, but I mean, how much of a needle would it be moved? I mean, same thing with New Orleans, in my opinion. They're a run first team at this point. They're not. They already have an established receiver. Is going to be the number one in Chris Olave. You know, you got an up and coming number two in Rashid Shaheed. So I mean, does that, you know, stunt their growth a little if you let him go to New Orleans? So, I mean, out of the two, that's the only two that kind of does make sense. I mean, obviously, I know some people out there probably love to see, you know, Dallas take a swing at it, but they not going to do it. So, I mean, I probably, you know, like you said, Kaz, if anybody got the control of an organization, it is Aaron Rodgers. You know, he's going. I mean, he did it last year. You know, he got a lot of the people that he liked to come in. You know, that they probably wouldn't have picked up no Allen Lazard or nothing like that. Randall Cobb. Yeah, they're not doing that. I mean, bringing over Nat Hackett. I mean, they're not doing that. But because he told them to, they did it. So, if anybody, that's probably the most likely place. But as far as moving the needle, I don't really see it.
That's fair.
Yeah, and the Jets did, you know, they only scored 9 points this past weekend, but I don't know if that, even though the Jets offense hasn't been great, they were coming off of a pretty good performance last week against the Patriots. But, you know, I don't know if that is that the Jets or if that is the Broncos, because the Broncos defense has been pretty stout the entire season thus far. And it seems like, I mean, Vance Joseph is a good defensive coordinator over there as well. So, that remains to be seen. We'll see how they do. They got another tough contest coming up here. What is it, in London or Germany this week? So, getting the London game started, the early games. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll get into those picks later. But, I mean, like you guys said, the Davante Adams news wasn't necessarily, like, surprising. And it's just ugly both ways because, the Raiders probably should never have hired Antonio Pierce anyway, even though, I liked it, just because the players liked it, obviously, and you like to see him get a chance. There was obviously like some type of momentum that he built, from last year as well. But, he hasn't necessarily handled in being a head coach to perfectly. And I mean, he is a rookie head coach. This is his first time doing it. So that is something to watch. And, he can always grow and get better from that. I really don't think that he was out here liking Instagram posts, for real. I mean, it might have been a slip up. They said that he went back and took the like back off. But, I don't know how I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because I just don't think that he would be that silly. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know how often these guys have these mess ups in terms of likes and stuff like that. Like, it seems to happen a lot, not just specifically with Antonio Pierce, but just athletes in general. But,
I thought he was trolling. I feel like Antonio Pierce will be the coach that be trolling and like some shit like that. Like, all right, I'm gonna fuck with them.
Maybe.
Then everything after that is like, nah.
But Davante Adams doing I haven't heard from anybody. I would like to hear from them. Then, a few hours later, we get the news that he's requested a trade. And then on top of that, last week we obviously got the sound bite from Antonio Pierce where he was talking about people making business decisions. And now it seems like it is Davante Adams who, a lot of people speculated that was Jack Jones, which it possibly could have been because they do have a good relationship. And they obviously, knew each other from when he was in college as well. But, Davante Adams now all of a sudden popping up with a hamstring, but you're also requesting a trade. And it seems like a little bit of a business decision there. But it's also like, the sentiment has kind of been that the Raiders have failed Davante Adams, and I just don't see it that way, honestly. Like, Davante Adams has been, making a lot of noise for a dude that picked his spot. Like, you wanted to go here. You could have changed. You could have stayed with the Packers and Jordan Love / Aaron Rodgers that last year and still gotten paid and everything. But you chose to go to a team that was already not a great team. They had a quarterback. Obviously, Derek Carr had led the Raiders to 2 playoffs appearances, but he only played in 1. Obviously, he got hurt 1 year and did make it to the end of the season. But you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes. You're in a division with Justin Herbert, who, I mean, I don't know if these guys are watching or how they look at it, in terms of like the actual athletes that are actually playing the games compared to, us and our fans and analysts that are looking at it and stuff like that. But I mean, there's no way that you should have thought, like, hey, Derek Carr's all of a sudden going to make this jump where he's, Patrick Mahomes level or the Raiders are going to consistently be great. Like, you made this bet, Davante Adams. And if anybody, you keep saying all you want to do is win. All you want to do is win. I don't know if all these interviews and making all this noise is winning culture. Where who we saw that with Stephon Diggs, which we'll get into a little bit because we got a reunion with him and the Bills this weekend coming up. We saw that a little bit with him, and how are you? He's saying the same thing. He wants to win. He wants to win. He wants to win. But these noisy teams, these noisy players, do we really ever see them become a winning team or end up being the team that's in a Super Bowl? I don't, maybe if we go back through history, we'll probably find some stuff, but I don't really know what he's kind of expecting there. With that being said, given the player more so than the attitude, because I am definitely kind of like souring a little bit on Davante Adams just as a whole, I would like to see him go to Baltimore. Obviously, Baltimore finally getting a true go-to receiver instead of doing all these little quick screens that they like to do with Zay Flowers. And I mean, obviously, they're betting on Rashad Bateman. They gave him a little extension as well. And he's made some plays, but he hasn't put it all the way together where he's a guy that you're like, okay, we should be scared of him, game in and game out. But so I would like to see him go there and kind of give Lamar, and obviously they're kind of clicking with Derrick Henry right now, or it appears to be, or Buffalo. Obviously, Buffalo has some young guys that they're expecting that have been stepping up and have been playing well, and Keon Coleman and Shakir, and they obviously brought in Curtis Samuel from the Commanders, and he was previously with Brady with the Panthers as well. But I don't know specifically how the money situation is going to go in terms of the compensation. Cash, you kind of touched on it from the jump. I don't think that he's going to go for a second-round pick like people are trying to say. We did see Keenan Allen, who comparable in age, comparable in stats over the past couple of years. He went for like a fourth-round pick. We did see Stephon Diggs go for a second-round pick, but that was I think a lot of people were like, I don't think he's worth a second-round pick. And they also had to, redo his contract where he's now a free agent at the end of the season. So there might be a restructuring with Davante Adams as well. Go ahead.
Sorry. Houston ended up, it kind of like, then they had like basically an extra second round pick that they ended up with after trading their first. So it kind of like more incentive to use it
out.
Yeah.
But it's like that also probably didn't make too much sense.
Yeah.
That probably didn't make too much sense in terms of a trade as well. But, the returns the Houston's doing well to start the season. So it's neither here nor there. So I think that I bet that we see something along like those lines, like a third, or a fourth, maybe a couple fifths, or even maybe a next year's third or something like that. That's conditional depending on how he plays. And, like I said, he has this hamstring injury. He's not expected to play this week. So if you're nicked, how am I really trying to give you a second round pick for, how many games we've got left? Like, shit. Goddamn, it's almost a quarter through the season now. So
about a quarter
13
away.
Games left. Yeah, almost a quarter away.
Y'all think this drags out, or you think it happens over the next week or so? Or you think it waits to the trade deadline?
Honestly, I think it depends on what the Raiders are asking for. I think, Cass, you said it that you think the Jets might outbid everybody. If I'm a betting man, I don't think that they have too many bids in general. So maybe it's the Jets just competing with themselves. So I think that's kind of really if you're a team, you have to, as good as Davante Adams has been, as much of a, stand-up guy, quote unquote, as he's been throughout his career, there's no way that you're looking at this and being like, okay, this is a guy that's going to come in and he's going to be like, he's just going to be a soldier. No matter what the team culture is, maybe Kansas City because he's got Patrick Mahomes, but that's an in-division trade that, is very, very unlikely to happen. If that would be who would do the second round pick, obviously, because, the Raiders aren't just going to give their division opponent something for cheap. But I don't know if you expect Davante Adams to just come in and be like, he's fitting in, not being this, I don't want to say malcontent because I wouldn't necessarily, but he's been a malcontent. He really has. He really has. That's what it is. He's been a malcontent. Yeah. He's been too noisy. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of how he's
in-season trades are always tough. Yeah, in-season trades are always just like, because you really don't you don't want to make this move for Davante Adams if you're any other team that we're talking about besides like Kansas City. You don't want to make this move and then like fuck around and miss the playoffs. So it's like, you don't make it like this week and then fuck around and miss the playoffs, and it's like, well, what do we do that for? You know what I mean? So that's the benefit of like waiting towards the trade deadline. But at the same time, that's why in-season trades are tough, because like you don't know how this guy's going to come in and play with you for half a season. You know what I mean? It's like, is it worth it at that point? A lot of times people are going to say no. That's just the nature of it. So it'd be interesting. Yeah.
It will be interesting to see, but I mean, I don't know. I think the Raiders would rather get it over with, but like I said, it just depends on what they're asking for. But I want to ask y'all about this because this is something else that's been kind of making some waves over the past couple of days. And it's going to hit home for one of you guys, but Mr. Darius Slay and Micah Parsons. Obviously, if you've heard anything over the past couple of days, Darius Slay, had, I don't know if he had necessarily a rough game, but he maybe had some rough moments against the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Eagles had a bad game against Tampa Bay, even though they were missing arguably 3 of their top 4 or 5 players on their team. So really tough to win anyway. But, he made some noise on social media. He obviously dropped his stats, his career stats, after some people questioned him and how his game played, but he deleted that and apologized for it. But I think the thing that kind of pissed people off the most is him doing a podcast with Micah Parsons, who is obviously the Eagles' rival and the Cowboys, and talking about, they touched a little bit about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and how he yaps a little bit and him giving up a couple plays here and there. How did you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel about the kind of feedback or backlash of that? I'm wondering what you guys think. And then, we talked about it a little bit about these player podcasts. We've done it multiple times over multiple shows. Now that this backlash has come, do you guys feel any different, or are you guys kind of standing your ground even further? I'm interested to hear.
Go ahead, Chris. I want to hear you. That's your boy.
Obviously, why do the podcast? What are you gaining out of it by doing a podcast? But at the same time, everybody's in the era of, we're trying to do podcasts. We're trying to make, our second career, or whatever the case may be, make a career out of it and all that. So I get that from that aspect of doing it, because he got his own podcast. And I understand most people are going to be like, well, why would you be on a podcast with somebody with your division as a division rival? But most people don't know that they were really close friends before Michael Parsons even got in the league. Like, they hung out and they work out every year together. So they're really actually for legitimately friends before he even became, a Cowboys player. But at the same time, it's just the optics of the situation where it looks like, you're clowning your own teammate. But I got to believe that he's not. Darius Slay's not an idiot. He's the cat. He's one of the captains of the team. Like, he's not a fucking idiot. So I honestly don't think CJ Gardner-Johnson took anything by it. But obviously, people are gonna read whatever they want to read and say, "Hey, you done fucked up the locker room. You fractured the locker room." And it's like, well, you're not in the locker room. You're just saying it because you don't like that I'm on a podcast with somebody. Now, again, my perspective: why the fuck you need to do it? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing a podcast during the season? Let that shit be off season, man. That's where I stand. As far as what he did, as far as, laughing at CJ Gardner, I don't give a fuck about that. But the podcast in general is like, bruh, you in season, I get it, outside of, practice, whatever, that's your leisure time, but just table it to off season.
That's where I'm at with it. Very unnecessary to do that shit in season with a division rival, especially with the start that you're having personally. I don't think, you got to understand, to be a leader on that team, you got to understand the optics. It's what it is. It's all about the media and what media drives, all of this shit, to be honest. You got to understand what's going to come from that while you're doing it. You can't you got to, how old is he? 30?
30.
He
Yeah, all right.
One, I think.
Yeah, you got to know at this point, anything that you do is going to come back, especially all the heat that your team has had over the last year and a half. You got to know that shit's going to come back negatively regardless. And it just seems like he didn't give a fuck. He's just going to sit there and just yuck it up. I don't really care. Like Chris said, I don't think, it's going to damage too much of the locker room as far as between him and CJ. CJ did post, I don't know if that was real or not, but on the story saying shaking my head or something like that.
I don't think that was real.
It might not have
he
been
could have
real.
deleted. He could have deleted it, but I don't.
But it is CJ, so I don't know anything. But I don't think he really took much offense to it. But I just think it's unnecessary and it's tough because I know players want to do this to kind of get their voices heard and all of that. But this is you can't use that excuse and then come out and kind of do shit like that. That's not getting your voice heard. That's just unnecessary shit. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's not good to do that shit in season, at least.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not a fan of it. Obviously, in season either. I mean, has it benefited anybody? Truly, because from even with LeBron and JJ Redick, it started off high and people loved it, and then then it immediately went to, oh, he's undermining his coach. Maybe the Kelsey brothers maybe are the only, or I guess Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and they haven't really gotten too much
he be on there
backlash, but I
talking
don't
crazy
know if
too, though.
he do be
Like,
talking crazy, but
I don't know if
know
people
if that
like watch that too much.
Yeah,
I was just
that's
about
what I was
to
gonna
say. People
say.
might not watch, but he be talking.
Yeah.
He
He be
He be
talking
talking
some
spicy,
shit.
but I mean I don't know if people pay attention to that as much. Obviously, it's the Lions, and then his brother isn't somebody that is a huge player. Obviously, he's bounced around a couple of teams as well. But the Kelsey brothers, even then, Trav obviously had a kind of a down regular season, but he had the benefit of being a 2-time champion at the point of them starting, and then the Taylor Swift stuff probably also kind of gave people a reason not to look at the podcast. So who's to say that wouldn't have went a little sour if it wasn't for the Taylor Swift stuff last year. But yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything that's coming to mind that it's benefited.
I think PG is the only one that it kind of benefits because it gives us a little, like how he does it too with his guests that come on. A lot of his guests, he catch them when they are in the city, coming in, visiting from a visiting team, and he'll have them on. It was a few episodes last season where they were kind of recap the game against each other and stuff like that. That's kind of cool to see because basketball is just different too. Just inherently from football.
I wouldn't say he benefited from it because Podcast P. I mean, that's the name of it. But Paul George, niggas was going to call him Podcast P as soon as the Clippers fucked up. They're going to call him Podcast P or Playoff P or Where's Paul Doe or whatever. He was already somebody that was being made fun of like consistently. So I don't know. I mean, his podcast is great. Don't get me wrong. And I know a lot of people love his podcast, but I'm saying more so like benefit to where like, people aren't criticizing you for the podcast, or like when something comes up, they're not coming back to being like, oh, it's because you're doing this podcast. Micah, I feel like more than anybody is probably, it seems like every other day. And Paul George is not on there really talking about the game, like games that they're playing, in season. He's not talking about that. Mike is over there talking about, oh, I think XYZ team is going to win, blah, blah, blah. Like he's giving weekly picks like we are. And I'm like, bro, like you're playing, like, power rankings and shit, so that's a little different, in my opinion, than and podcast P is more like, he's letting them tell their story and stuff like that. It's a little different. Mike is doing it almost from an analyst angle, so it's a little weird, but yeah, it's like you said. I mean, to sum it all up, the optics is you fight so hard against it, and you fight. The whole point of the podcast game, I feel like you touched on it, Cass, is so that they can get their voice out. So you should be very conscious of your voice and what your optics are. That's so like once again like. If you're not very conscious of that, then maybe you should just wait till the off season. Because I would love to hear. We hear a lot of stories about basketball. I would love that for somebody to do like a podcast P with football. Like they don't really have too many players coming on and doing that like just like that, where they're telling their stories, they're telling how they came up, telling about the pregame or the pre-draft stuff and all of that stuff like that.
Yeah.
They do it in spurts, but it's not just full on interviews like that. And I would even say, this is a little bit of a lesser known one as well. But the Trenches podcast with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, those first 2 weeks, it was not pretty on Colts Twitter. I'll tell you that. Like they weren't playing well either, but I mean, everybody was going in on them, especially because the first game, Zaire was going back and forth with CJ Stroud over the offseason. And, it wasn't even CJ Stroud that really got off on the Colts. It was the run game, which, that's your bread and butter, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it's like, and he stepped up over the past couple weeks. So, but I mean, he's gotten better talking his shit, but we'll see how that goes for the rest of the season. But getting into the games from last week, what was the biggest takeaway from any of the games of the week? What was a game that you guys thought was kind of surprising? Anything like that? I'm interested to hear.
For me, I say the Vikings Green Bay game. I mean, I picked the Vikings to win, but I didn't expect them to get out like they did. They got out real quick, real fast in a hurry, and it got up on them. And shout out to Green Bay for, fighting back, actually not giving up, and had a chance to still win the game at the end. But that was a good game, and I mean, hey, the Vikings surprise team right now. They looking legit. I know people for the first few weeks, people were just saying, Sam Darnold, whatever. They ain't gonna do nothing. But hey, they keep winning. So I mean, that was a good game to me.
Say you, Cass.
That was definitely one of mine. I mean, I know we'll talk about it too, but let's go ahead and start it. Is this Ravens Bills game we had on Sunday night? Didn't think it would go like this. People talk about game scripts all the time and how they get changed. And the reason why I picked Buffalo, and I'm sure this is the reason why too, Shy, like you thought that Buffalo would pretty much have the lead, and how it's been so far this season, they play well with the lead. And you kind of saw the flip side of how dangerous the Ravens can be with a lead. They come out on their first offensive play of the game, and he takes that shit. Yeah, he takes that shit to the crib, and it's like, oh shit, this night is not about to go how we thought it was gonna go. And then he turns around and ends up with 200 yards rushing. It's like, well, damn near 200 yards rushing. It's like, damn, like when this team is clicking, and this is what, the vision was, of course, that when Derrick Henry came over, like when this team has the lead and all they have to do is just run it down your throat, it's going to be very tough to stop. And, Buffalo, I don't think this said too much about Buffalo in my opinion. I still think they're a good team. I just think the game strip just got fucked up very quickly. It just happens sometimes. And of course, we can talk about the play. The trick play, I guess you could say, that failed. They had momentum. They just got the fumble off of Lamar. They were I think they were at midfield or close to, or on the other side of midfield, and they had a real chance to march down and make it a 4-point game. And then that shit happens, and they go down to score instantly, and the game's over at that point. So you saw a little bit of like how like momentum can shift and shift back and just be over, like just off of one play. And you usually don't see it. You usually don't blame a game on one play, obviously, but that was huge as far as like the situation that they was in. So that was a game that was like surprising to me this weekend.
Yeah, I thought, I thought it was going to be a good game, and I did pick the Buffalo Bills to win just because of how dominant they had started the season off. And I actually thought that the Ravens were going to, I thought it was going to be a little bit of kind of how the game went, but a little opposite, except not a blowout, but I thought the Bills were going to be up, but the Ravens were going to start to kind of click towards the end of the game and then take it into this week. So it was good to see. It frustrates me because this is exactly what the Ravens missed last year. Not obviously they were a great team last year, but Derrick Henry should have been there last year. They should have just went ahead and executed the trade. Obviously, he got his opportunity to ride it out strong with Tennessee and in his career on a high note there. But it would have been amazing to see him get there last year midseason as they were rolling and kind of and continue on and hopefully have went to the Super Bowl. But you never know how things would have went. But it was good. It's good to see them clicking, and it seems like they're kind of trying to slowly figuring it out because Derrick Henry does have a different type of way that he runs, and he runs well outside of where the Ravens do a lot of stuff in shotgun and a lot of reoption and stuff like that. So that was good to see. I'd also say Cincinnati getting their first win was big. Like you said, the Vikings stay undefeated. Another weird game from Patrick Mahomes where we're now like 2 years. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl last year, but we're now 2 years in where Patrick Mahomes has been a pretty mediocre quarterback throughout the entirety of the regular season. He's been mediocre for the entirety of the start of the season. And it's something that I say this all the time, but teams need luck to win a Super Bowl. It's necessary. I would say that as great of a play as Snead made on Zay Flowers, that is, people can say what they want. That's luck that you get it at the specific time right before he's crossing it, that it punches in and the tip is paused. It's like right there where it's about to cross the goal line. So, that's something like that, that could be viewed as something that's kind of lucky, or in the Super Bowl, the 49ers are controlling the game, probably going to win the game until they fumble a punt, and then the Chiefs start rolling from there. So I don't know how long they can keep this up where they're being mediocre. The defense has been good, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's been great compared to the last year. I don't know how long they can keep this up. And with their team, their receivers are dropping like flies. Rashee Rice will get into, or we'll wait and hear a little bit more about that. We haven't heard a definite on if it's an ACL injury or not, but that's something that I'm very interested to watch to see how that continues to progress, because if he's out, I don't know if the Chiefs are, as much as people want them to be in the market for a receiver. I really don't think they are. So it's going to be interesting to see, is Sky Moore going to step up? Xavier Worthy has been a guy that has been just running straight.
Straight gold.
Is he going to step up? That I'm very interested to see how that goes. They did have a very tough stretch to start the season, so that's a good sign. But it's also we saw last year when they started off kind of well, but when it started getting into it during the midseason, it started kind of cratering, ultimately ending up with them losing to the Raiders and kind of a pretty dominant win by the Raiders as well. So I'm interested to see that. And then, we talked a little bit about the Jags, but we didn't put them on hot seat watch because, everybody was talking about it. But them having another tough loss like they did in the end, and the sound bites that have come from it since is not great. It's not great at all. So I would say, the biggest takeaway from me, it's got to be Mahomes. It's nobody wants to talk about it because they're the Super Bowl champs, but some alerts need to start going up. And I talked about it last year, but I ended up, eating my words pretty quickly. So I don't. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about it.
I get you on that though, because you could tell they too, they tried to make an effort to get Travis Kelce more involved in this game. And of course, he had 7 catches, 80 something yards or something like that. I think that's his max. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but I just and I know you probably agree with it, Shad. I don't know how much more you can get from this guy at this point. And if
I think I'm 100% sure he was going to retire if they didn't win the Super Bowl. If they didn't have this opportunity for a three-peat, I think he was going to retire. I'm sticking.
It's I don't know how much you can get from him, and I don't think he could be your number one option. I know everybody's respecting him still, of course, just because he be out there just running around. Really, he just be out there just running into open spots, which is cool. You and your quarterback have that kind of backyard chemistry, but I don't know. Yeah, it's been 4 wins, and that's not something to hang your hat on at all. It's always good to win this league, but
especially after the first game, where the first game it did look like the offense was going to start getting to what it used to be and rolling, and then ever since then it's been, it's just been. It seems like everything is hard for them. Nothing seems like it comes easy. And the turnovers are terrible. Patrick Mahomes doesn't seem comfortable, even though he's got a good offensive line. He's kind of been playing very Will Levis-ish. If you
throwing some bullshit up there,
they ain't gonna talk about it.
He throwing up some bullshit. No,
what is he? I think he's tied for second, or he's either tied for first or second in interception or turnovers this season. So
yeah,
But I don't want to ignore and not talk about Jared Goff, 18 for 18 against Seattle in a huge win where the Lions offense was rolling. Can we get Lions, Seattle in the playoffs? What is this, the 3rd straight year that they've had a fantastic game? Last year they had an overtime game. This year it went right down to the wire for real. Obviously, Geno Smith threw an interception late in the game, and some people want to kill him about it. But they were down two scores because their defense couldn't get a stop. But getting to see them, they had a lot of D linemen missing, and it was pretty evident to see they couldn't stop anybody. But I would love to see that playoff matchup, because they've treated us to some really good games, especially with this one being in prime time. Obviously, the second of them 2 Monday nights, though.
Luckily, the other one
But
was a blowout, so we had this one to hang our hats on for sure.
yeah, ugly blowout. And, now that we can go ahead and get into the hot seat watch that we started off last week. I think Will Levis, he clearly did not hear me last week because my boy, you had another bad turnover. And, Mason Rudolph, I think he was a little bit more healthy than, they led on to be, but I think they really wanted to see how I think they wanted him to see how offense was supposed to be run, even though Mason Rudolph wasn't by any means like a world beater or anything like that. Some people will probably say the same for Indianapolis and Anthony Richardson, which is another person I talked about last week. Even though I would say it's a little different because they were up 17-0, but still, they held him out. Joe Flacco was mediocre, but he was a veteran. He kind of did his thing a little bit, even though some people are going to be talking about it. Joe Flacco, should he start? Should he start? Same thing with Mason Rudolph. Should he start? Should he start? I even saw somebody saying, I can see Jake Browning ending up getting traded over to Tennessee, after he had a pretty solid ending to the season last year with Brian Callahan. So that'll be something that I'll be interested to watch. But with our second week of Hot Seat Watch, who you guys got, and whether it's a coach, player, team, I'm interested to see who you guys got and see if they answer the call.
Ooh, I know I'll go first, Chris. So last week I did talk about the Raiders, and they ended up winning, but they still lost the week because of all the chaos that's coming around the organization that does not need it. Yeah. But this week I'm going to talk about Miami, and I touched on it last week. As far as like how their offense looks with at the time it was Skylar Thompson. This weekend they put up another putrid performance, and it was Huntley back there who is getting to start again this week. You got to show something. Now I get that you lost your quarterback, but now you got Tyreek Hill on the sidelines, and of course he said that he was motivating his teammates. I saw that little quote today. Bullshit. You were getting heated on the sideline. Let's be real, right? Now people are going to start questioning. It's already in the media. Like, what are you going to do with Tyreek Hill? Does he become disgruntled if Miami has a bad season? You got to figure some shit out. You cannot come out this weekend 1-4 expecting in the AFC expecting to have a decent season, and then so you come out at 1-4. Some difficult decisions have to be made, and people are going to start hitting your line about these players that you have on your team. Whether it's Tyreek, whether it's I don't know, maybe it's Jalen. I don't know, but Miami's one to look out for. It's like, what's going on over there? Are you going to look better on offense? You going to look like a competent football team? Like Mike McDaniel, like I said it last week, you're known as this, this offensive mastermind, offensive genius. You got to be able to produce, even if it's a backup quarterback. I get it. You still have every other piece there. I know Mostert was out. You still have A-Chain. You still have all your other pieces there. You got to come up with something more than 3 points throughout the majority of the game and scoring some bullshit at the end. Like you gotta show some life. So that's where I'm at with it. Miami is something to watch. That whole situation.
And I saw somebody on Twitter say they were like wondering, is Mike McDaniel an offensive mastermind or is he more of a QB whisperer? And that's going to be something that's interesting to watch moving forward as well. Like, is it really just the offense, like your scheme and everything, like how you guys have it? Obviously, it's coming from a little bit of the Shanahan tree and whatnot, or was it more you just were able to unlock Tua and unlock Tua's confidence? Obviously, put him around some special receiving threats. So they're definitely on. And I think everybody's kind of in the same where they're looking like, hey,
what's going on over there?
We just paid some folks. Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
What say you, Chris?
This might be a random team to y'all, but I'm gonna put the Browns on the hot seat watch. I mean, they're 1-3. I mean, another tough loss for them. And one of the biggest things is, Shah touched on it earlier in the season, that it seems like every other year, like, Jim Schwartz have a good defense, then he have a bad defense. Like, they should be able to hang their hat on their defense, and their defense has been playing subpar all year. They got a hot team, and the Commanders coming in, looking like world beaters out here. And I'm looking for them to, at least step up and try to, help the offense out. And right now, the offense is still stagnant. I don't know what you're gonna do with Deshaun Watson. I guess you just gotta ride that wave out at this point. I know. I'm not sure if he's gonna play this week because I think he's been activated, but I don't know if he's still off the list. I'm talking about Nick Chubb, but he's practicing and whatnot. But they gotta right the ship right now. I mean, this gonna be another lost year for them if they don't if they'll do nothing right now. But and then I'm not gonna put them on the hot seat, but I did want to touch on it because I know a lot of people, think that they should be. But my own team, the Philadelphia Eagles, I just feel like it's the discourse around the team is kind of crazy to me. For us to be 2-2, AJ Brown hasn't played for 3 games. The last game, Devontae Smith didn't play, and he didn't play pretty much the whole fourth quarter of the Saints game, and then we lose our right tackle. And it's just the fact that a lot of people, I understand, Jalen does have some crazy turnovers, but I mean, you're asking, not too many quarterbacks can go out there in general and win a game without their 2 best receivers gone, and then one of their best linemen who's borderline Hall of Fame,
lineman, probably.
Right. And you asking him to do this, and I understand, we've been having trouble with the Bucs in general, but I just feel like you can't really dictate this team based on last year. And that's a lot of things. That's a lot of what people are doing. They're taking what happened last year and just carrying it over without showing without having some context to the whole situation. Like, it's only 4 games in, again, missing his weapons. You're 2-2 heading into a bye week. I mean, you can't be too upset with it, but I just wanted to touch on that. Because I know people probably think Nick Sirianni should be out of there, which, I mean, I can see why he has had some very questionable coaching decision. But I get, but he's aggressive by nature. This is what he does. It's like Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell aggressive by nature. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you get it wrong. Okay, but to say that, this team is just imploding itself when it's so many other teams that doing just as bad. Like, I don't understand that.
Worst. A lot worse. That's why I said this. Right. That's part of the reason, along with the injuries, why I said this was the team. If everybody ever, because we talked about before the season, having an early bye week. Fuck, this shit sucks. It's coming at a good time. It gives y'all a way to get healthy, but also get out the media for a week, get out the limelight, and because that's all. These last couple of weeks have been ridiculous. Ever since the Atlanta loss, it's been like. It seems like you could do nothing right in a way. Like, even after you won, even after you beat the Saints, which was an ugly win, but it was still you know what I mean?
Half your linemen, your top receivers gone, and you was able to gut it out.
And but that's not the narrative that came from it. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a way to get out the media for a week, get back healthy. Like, this bye week ended up being kind of, I won't say perfect, but really good for y'all at this time.
Right on time. Right on time. And then Bryce Huff, obviously the noise with him as well, and people expecting him to make some plays. And I mean, I agree. I mean, it is everybody, that's how it is. There's year over year carryover. People feel like, I mean, that's what people were doing with the Jacksonville Jaguars and talking about Doug Peterson and how they lost 9 of the last 10 games or something like that. But once again, I'm not going to put the Jacksonville Jaguars on here because we all know what they got going on. Low-hanging fruit there. But I'm going to focus. So the Browns are one of the teams that I was kind of thinking about. But, I would say the kind of, if there is a light at the end of the tunnel, Deshaun Watson has actually been playing well the past couple of weeks. He has been he played really well this past week, and the team kind of let him down. If they can Nick Chubb, I think, is really kind of their heartbeat and the heart of the team, truly. If we've already seen him return from some major knee injuries, if he can come back and not necessarily be 100% Nick Chubb, but still put up these 100-yard games or, churn out some big plays, explosive plays for that team. I do think that, we could start seeing them have a little bit of an uptick. So that's why I kind of left them out for now. But I do want to look at a couple receivers. So obviously Davante Adams was going to be on my list as well, but Davante Adams, he put himself on the hot seat watch because he requested a trade. But I'm going to start off with my guy Stephon Diggs. It's a huge week for you. Stephon Diggs hasn't been a world beater, obviously, because Nico Collins has been killing it from start to finish this season. But Stephon Diggs does have a few touchdowns, but he hasn't had his big game yet. He has his game. He's gotten to play his one of his former teams in Minnesota. They lost. I did say last week that the Texans could be looking at it could be getting to their tough part, and it almost played out really just exactly like I said. They ended up having that last second win against Jacksonville as well. But there's another article that came out today on ESPN talking about Stephon and the divorce between him and Buffalo. It did seem like Buffalo didn't really want to shit on him, but it was like he wasn't the greatest to be around. His brother, they did have a part where they said his brother at the end, or they talked to his brother last week, and his brother was like, I can't wait to see what happens, blah, 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 with a little smirk, hinting that they might be he might do something. It's a home game for them. If they lose, all eyes are going to be on Stephon Diggs. And if he doesn't have, I would say if they lose and he doesn't have a big game, there's going to be a lot of conversation about it. He might be able to skate off on it just because he is a receiver. But depending on how the game goes, obviously Buffalo's coming off of a huge loss. So typically, I kind of talked myself out of it last week. When we see teams have either a huge win or a huge loss, we kind of see the inverse the next week. So, we'll get into the picks and, we'll see who everybody picks. But I'm interested to see how he handles the game, and if he has a good game. But for my second person, my second receiver, we can kind of segue this as well into the picks. Drake London. Drake London, there's been a lot of noise about Kyle Pitts thus far, and people want to call him I don't want to say people want to call him a bust because he did have 1,000 yards his first season, but he's been kind of a disappointment, I would say. I don't want to say bust, and I don't want to say Drake London's been a bust either, but Drake London, you were drafted in the top 10. You've only had 300-yard games in 3 seasons. People are expecting a top 10 pick to be that guy and be a top 10 receiver. For reference, Malik Neighbors already has 200-yard games, and he's only played 4 games. Malik Neighbors is our Marvin Harrison Jr. already has 200-yard games. He's only played 4 games. They've already come in and been game breakers. I wouldn't say that Drake London has been a game breaker. And you even have people trying to say that Darnell Mooney, which I don't necessarily agree with, is better than him as well, which, that's a very small select group of people. But I think this was a good week to kind of pick him out. The Falcons have not been world beaters on offense to the slightest. But he has 2 of his 300-yard games have come against Tampa, who they are playing this week, obviously tomorrow. So Drake London, it's time. You don't get the excuse of quarterback play. No receivers get the excuse of quarterback play because there's so many quarterbacks that are making noise with bad quarterbacks. You don't get that excuse. It's time to make some noise. It's time to Kyle Pitts too, Bijan too, but Drake London,
for sure.
Drake London. There's been a lot of you've got some other fellow USC receivers that are out here making noise, and one USC receiver that was about to be on my hot seat as well before he had a big game against the Steelers. But we might see if he, what Pittman, if he ends up on there soon again. But Drake London. It's time. It's time to show you that you're the guy. It's time to show you're the number one. You have a quote-unquote quarterback or either now or a quarterback in the waiting. It is time. It's time. And Thursday night would be a great time to show it. I mean, Atlanta is they're in a, I don't want to say crossroads in the season, but, right now can kind of determine where their season's going to go. You could really say they should be 0-4 right now, but they're lucky to be 2-2. You can maybe even say if the Chiefs game goes a little different, maybe they're 3-1. But, this is where it kind of starts teetering. You're getting into the division games. And it's a huge game on Thursday night. It's at home. The Falcons offense has only put up 20 points once this season, just the offense, not the entire team. Obviously, they put up 20 points this past week, but the offense themselves and the 20 points came against the Eagles. And we know that if it wasn't for a blunder, they wouldn't have put up that 20 points either. So it's time for, Drake London. If you can be the engine, you should be the engine. Let's make some noise and, let's see if you we said a couple people on here said that you could possibly be a top 10 receiver at the end of the season.
Okay.
At this point, I would say you were the first person drafted in a really good receiving class with George Pickens, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams has started to make some noise. He was somebody that we were looking for at the beginning of the season. I think Khalil Shakir was in that class, Christian Watson, Alec Pierce, Romeo Dobbs. I don't think at this point that anybody would say he's top 3 with Pickens, Olave, and Garrett Wilson. And then he's right there with J-Mo. Well, I won't say he's right there with J-Mo. He's probably above J-Mo, but he's kind of making some noise now. We'll see how that goes. So, Drake London, hot seat.
I like that one. I like that one. And I seen and of course, every fan base was going kind of crazy today. But I seen some crazy shit today. Talking about go get Davante Adams or Davante Adams next to Drake. This shit shouldn't even be a conversation. If Drake did what he was supposed to do, if Drake is the guy that you're supposed to be, we shouldn't even be thinking about, let's bring in a number 1 receiver. No, let Drake be that guy. And Pitts. But Drake should be that guy. This should never be it should on Falcons fans or media's mind, when shit comes like this. But we'll see what happens. Drake, yes, it's a huge game on Thursday. We'll get to it in our picks, but I like that one. Drake, you're on the hot seat, bro. You got to be a number 1.
We can go. Yeah, got to be a number 1. Got to be it's not like he's played bad. And like I said,
he's been. He had 50 yards a game, something like that. 60 yards.
If I would say the Falcons, I didn't want to say the Falcons are at a crossroads necessarily just because they are 2-2, which most of the league is right now. But we can say maybe Drake London is at a crossroads where people are starting to look. Hey, are you just a good 2, or are you this
exactly
this guy? Are you a guy? So with that being said, we can go ahead and segue into our picks for the week. Atlanta versus Tampa Bay is the first game starting tomorrow. And I will also be in attendance live and in color. So we can go ahead and let us know how we did last week. And then we can go ahead and get into the picks.
You tell me you were going to that game. Hold on. What the fuck?
Yeah, he going there, man.
Different.
I'll be there.
Oh.
But your boy getting in the ring, ain't it?
Yeah, Matt Ryan, yup.
We'll see.
Uh-huh.
We're going to see. Big game.
All right, picks last week. So I only had 2 right out of the 6. Shy, you only had 2 right out of the 6 as well. Those 2 being Tennessee and Minnesota. Chris, you got 4. You got 4 right last week. The only ones you got wrong were Miami, of course, and then Arizona, who got curb stomped. So season, Chris, you caught up to me. So totals on the season, right picks. I'm at 14. Chris, you're at 14. Shy, you're at 10.
Am I even at 10? Oh, God, I am.
Yeah, it's been a little rough. It's been a little rough. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, so like I said, Tampa Bay at the Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan ring night. It is kind of funny that Arthur Blank made it his Ring of Honor night, the biggest night in the stadium, when Matt Ryan, the best player in franchise history, was getting inducted a couple weeks later. But hey, who you guys got and why?
Dang, Kaz, y'all done had 3 home games in a row, huh?
3 home games in a row. Yeah. 3 out of 5 primetime games. It's been an interesting start to the season. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's a tough game for me to pick. I want to go with the Bucks because they outside of the game against Denver, which Shah alluded to, maybe Denver defense is just that good. Outside of that one game against Denver, the Bucks has been playing very, very well this year. Baker seems comfortable. But I'm gonna go with the Falcons. Y'all at home. It's a division game. Division game can go either way. It doesn't matter records and all that. You just throw that shit out the window. That shit don't even matter no more. But I'm gonna go ahead and go with the Falcons. Y'all at home. Y'all gonna send Matt Ryan off right. So I give y'all the dub.
I hope so. I hope so. I thought y'all would do that with Nick Foles, but y'all didn't. And we too. But it's tough. Like you said, division games go either way. Last season, we won the away game. They won their away game here, so can't really go by that. I'm going to just go by a team that I think is due for a good offensive performance. I hope that's true. But the last couple of weeks have not been encouraging on the offensive side for this team. Like, and a lot of times they will move down the field, they'll catch a flow and be trash in the red zone, which of course a lot of teams are, obviously. But I'm hoping to see a lot more from this offense. It is a short week, so short weeks always lean towards home teams, just inherently. So I'm going Atlanta with this one.
Yeah, this was like Chris, you mentioned, this is a tough pick because, I think, I said it during our off-season preview and then even mentioned it a little bit during our when we looked at the division winners, even though I didn't go with them. But Tampa Bay has been greatly disrespected probably by all of us and really just everybody, kind of in the country, just in terms of like not getting the respect that they are a really good team. Even in week 2, we had the Detroit Bucks game, or Detroit versus Bucks. And that was a game that I think we all might have picked the Lions just because, I know I picked the Lions because of the Bucks injuries, and they've, like Chris said, they've been kind of, aside from the Denver game, they've been rolling. The stat I mentioned as well about Atlanta, like I said, they've only scored 20 points once. I mean, it's been a bit of a struggle on offensively, given the talent that they do have. And then kind of like Cass said, it is, you would think that this is your due. Your due. And Drake London, like I just talked about him ad nauseum. He does have 200, both of his 100-yard games have come against the Bucks as well. I do think that this is the game that Atlanta, we start to see a little bit of a better offensive performance, but I am going to go with Tampa Bay. I had Atlanta about 30 minutes ago, but I think I talked myself out of it when I started looking through the stats. So I'm going to rock with Tampa Bay. I do think that I still think that they have the best team in the division, and I think that Baker has been on a roll. And their offense has been on a roll. Bucky Irving is really starting to kind of catch on. That they've struggled running the ball over the past few years, and we thought Rachaad White might be, a guy, and it seems like he might just be more of a pass catching back, whereas Bucky Irving is actually a really good runner. I think that he has a pretty good game, and then they win in a close, very, very close game. I'm going to go 28, like 24-ish. But we see like Cass said, I think that this is the game that Atlanta's offense starts to look a little bit more consistent going into the 10-day break. And then next week, I think they've got the Panthers, another division game, which, maybe that'll be in the picks next week, and we'll see what it gets into. Yeah, I'm rocking with the Bucks in a close but high scoring game.
All right.
But getting into the next week, like I said at the beginning, top of the show, we are starting to get into the London games or the international games. I think we have, or actually, I guess technically we had one with Brazil, but we're getting into the early morning international games. This one being at 9:30. We've got the Jets versus Minnesota. The Jets coming off of a tough loss, like we spoke about, with the Minnesota coming off of a big win, which we spoke about as well. Who you guys got and why?
I got Minnesota, man. I'm gonna just have them keep on rolling. I like what I see from the offense. The Jets, it's just been a weird team so far this year. I don't know their offensive identity. Their defense hasn't been as stout as I predicted them to be this year. So I think the Minnesota, they're confident right now. They ain't got nothing to lose. Nobody thought they was gonna be good. I mean, what Shad did till JJ got hurt. But most people didn't pick them to do anything. So they're riding this high right now. I think they're gonna get the dub.
Minnesota like a damn good team right now, man. And it's honestly at this point it's getting harder and harder to pick against them. The Jets got a lot of stuff to figure out. Shada asked you earlier, like, do you think it goes to the trade deadline or whatever for a trade for Davante? I want to predict Minnesota wins this game, and on Tuesday of next week, they will trade for Davante Adams. I think that's how it's going to go.
Okay. So I'm going tough because I didn't even like how this started. but I'm going with a second away team. Technically, I guess it's both away, but a second away team, which the Jets are the away team in this game. I do think Minnesota has been rolling, but they haven't. Chris said that the defense hasn't been stout, but that it still is a pretty good defense. And last week they did hold, which it is a rookie. They did hold Bo Nix to 60 yards passing, and somehow still lost the game, which is insane.
Yeah, that's ugly.
But I do think that the Jets defense, they finally they confused Sam Darnold a little bit, and he finally has his first stinker. And it's obviously with changing of times and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to predict how teams play. So I'm thinking
Sam
that
Darnold
I'm kind of looking, yeah, kind of, so I'm rocking with the Jets and very nervously, but this is, I wanted to, I said that I don't want to say the Falcons are at a crossroads, but I do want to say the Jets are at a crossroads because at least the Falcons, it seems like things are a little bit more positive. Drake London even came out and said he thinks the offense is right there in terms of breaking out. The Jets, I don't want to necessarily say it's doom and gloom, but with Aaron Rodgers, it's always a little noisy, but there has been the back and forth with him and Robert Saleh. It seems like every week they have to say something about their relationship, which if you have to keep talking about your relationship is probably not that strong. Garrett Wilson pretty much said that Nate Hackett doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And as many words, he basically said that, so this is a crossroad games for the Jets, in my opinion. And I think that they come out with the dub. But I mean, maybe we could still see that. I think that maybe would be the reason that they would trade for Davante Adams more than if they lost, honestly, because they would be like, I don't know if we want to give up these assets. Aaron, you might need to get traded.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But yeah, that's going to be a really good one. I do think though, 9:30 in the morning. So make sure y'all set y'all's clocks. Well, I don't know about you, Cass. You got what? 7:30 in the morning.
7:30. Yeah, I gotta set mine for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But Baltimore at Cincinnati with for the next one. Obviously, both coming off wins. Baltimore coming off of a dominant win. Cincinnati coming off of a good win, getting their first win of the season. Seeing Jamar Chase have a good game. Obviously, Joe Burrow's been playing well, but he did throw his first interception this week against his predecessor and Andy Dalton of the Carolina Panthers. Who you guys got and why?
Ooh, another divisional game. AFC North, man, those division games are definitely tough. But if I'm not mistaken, Baltimore doesn't have their number the past few years. I mean, they've been going out there and being dominant. And last week was a good game by them. I know you usually say after a big game, it kind of comes. It might be a stinker next game, but I don't know, man. I got to see another week of Cincinnati. They started off very, very rough this year, but I'm gonna go ahead and pick Baltimore to get it done.
I'm not gonna lie, Cincinnati defense might be in a lot of trouble. But I'm gonna pick them in this game. It's not a very confident pick, I'll say that. But I do think Baltimore, like you said, Chris and Shai, after you come off a big game like that, some shit happens, and I think Cincinnati is in a position right now where you don't want to come out of this weekend 1-4.
Right.
And if you are, your season is pretty much I'm not saying it's over, but it's very hard to come back from that. So I think they need it more, and I think they go and pull it out on the road somehow. So I'll go Cincinnati.
So y'all saying that the Ravens are my second favorite team. Well, Cincinnati is definitely Cass's second favorite team. But this is a tough. I mean, like you said, it's division games. It's always tough. And then, like I said, with coming off a big game, you typically see the inverse of it. But I'm rocking with Baltimore. I said last week that I thought Baltimore was going to lose, but their offense was going to start clicking to the point where they kind of take off in this game. Cincinnati's defense, they did get the win last week, but the Panthers have looked good with Andy Dalton. They've looked really good with Andy Dalton. the Panthers pretty much got whatever they wanted last week as well. It came down to a couple plays here and there, but the game was a close game. It wasn't like they just handled the Panthers or anything like that. And I think the Ravens are starting to click, and so I'm rocking with the Ravens for another away team getting a dub. So this might go very, very bad for me, but for my third away team, I'm going with the Ravens. They are the favorites in this game, even though it's in Cincinnati. So they would be heavy favorites if it was in Baltimore. And like you said, Chris, Baltimore and Lamar has had Joe Burrow's number, and I don't think that it ends on Sunday. So I'm rocking with the Ravens, and hopefully they give me some dubs so I can catch back up to y'all. But moving to probably the biggest game of the week. Well, Baltimore Cincinnati's that's a doozy, but probably the biggest game of the week in terms of narratives. One that we already talked about a little bit earlier, but Buffalo at Houston. Buffalo coming off of a tough loss, Houston coming off of a very, very, very good, even though Jacksonville's not a good team, but having that late win, you can't, especially with how the schedule is shaping up to be, a good win for them in the last few minutes. But like I said, Buffalo versus Houston, who you guys got and why?
It's an interesting one because both teams are 3-1, but they're both of their 3-1s are completely different. Like outside of the game last week, Buffalo has been looking dominant for the first 3 games. Houston, their 3 wins, man, they don't look good. They're looking like a team that's missing something or something isn't right in general. They could very well have lost either one of those games that they played. But I'm gonna go with Buffalo just for that reason. To be honest, it's something about Houston. I know a lot of people have picked them to obviously win the division. A lot of people have picked them to make it to the AFC, go championship, go to Super Bowl, and all that. But I'm not ready to say any of that. Their team doesn't look as dominant as and you normally see that as especially out of a second year quarterback. Team start to figure out they got tape on you now. They started to know your little tendencies that you have. So we're gonna see. And Buffalo has a damn good defense. So I'm gonna go with Buffalo.
Tough because Joe Mixon did not practice again today, and I think I don't know how good he is, but after that first week, you gotta think he still has some left in the tank. And after you saw from I don't know, man, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. After you saw what Baltimore did against Buffalo's defense on the ground, you want to think if Joe Mixon plays this game, he can have a little bit of success. I want to put a qualifier in here to see if Joe Mixon plays, but I'm gonna just go with Houston outright. I'm gonna pick Houston. They're at home. Like Shad mentioned earlier, about this being an emotional game, possibly for Stephon Diggs. I think they kind of rose off on the rest of the team with him being one of the leaders there. So I think they kind of pull it out for him, or try to at least. So I got Houston.
Okay. It's just not tough for me at all. I'm not going to make it tough. This Buffalo's going to win. I think Buffalo's probably going to dominate this game.
That's 4 away games, my boy.
That's 4 straight away games for me. And hey, it might be 6 straight, but we'll see. We just watched Buffalo dominate this similar Shanahan type offense with a better play caller than I believe Bobby Slowick is. A lot of people, like we said, pegged CJ Stroud to be an MVP candidate. I don't even think he's been a top 15 quarterback in the league this year thus far. Not to say that he's played bad. He just hasn't been great. With Joe Mixon missing out, and I don't believe Dameon Pierce practiced either. So it's looking like another week of Cam Akers. And with Buffalo coming off of a big-time loss, even though they, we talked about the trick play, they kind of corrected themselves and appeared about to make the Buffalo Ravens game a game as well. But I think that Josh Allen has something to prove this season, and I think with Stephon being there, you said that they might rally. I think Buffalo really wants to rally around Josh and around their head coach and Sean McDermott. I do think that Sean McDermott has found a lot of success against the Shanahan offense. I mean, we've seen them blow out the Dolphins multiple times. Obviously, some people will say the Dolphins are a little bit soft. not me saying it, but some people will say the Dolphins are a little bit soft. So maybe that's a little bit
Great
different
game.
there. I do think that Nico Collins does get off, but I think that Stephon Diggs has a rough game, and I think we see our first Stephon outburst. Maybe not something like major, but we see a little. We do see some signs of frustration, and Buffalo wins pretty handily in this. But moving to our Sunday night game, this is an interesting game because some people would say it's Dallas versus Pittsburgh. Dallas is obviously beat up. We have Micah Parsons out following the Thursday night game, and Marcus Lawrence is out. We just got news today that Brandon Cooks will also be out. So they're a pretty beat up team, and for a team that already didn't have weapons, losing Brandon Cooks and then obviously losing their best player on their best player on the team, and two of their best players on defense. It's a tough one. And then the Steelers coming off their first loss to Indianapolis, which Indianapolis kind of blew them out last year too. So I don't know if that's maybe just an Indianapolis thing where Shane Steichen's kind of got that defense's number. But up until that point, that defense had held every team to under 20 points, whereas Indy kind of blew the doors open on that one. Remains to be seen if Dallas will be able to do the same. And Justin Fields is also arguably coming off of his best game. He led somewhat of a comeback against Indy as well. I think he had 300 yards passing, 3 or 4 touchdowns, as well as he had a couple turnovers, but he also had about 40 or 50 yards rushing. So they haven't permanently named him a starter yet, which is that a great sign for him in terms of how they feel about him? But this would, a primetime game on Sunday night against Dallas in a kind of a rivalry game, not much of a rivalry now as it used to be back in the day, but that could possibly be what solidifies it for him. Dallas versus Pittsburgh Sunday night. Who you guys got and why?
We ain't really talked about the game, but I mean, Dallas did not look good last week. They could have very well lost that game last week. But like you said, Shad, the injuries, man. I mean, you losing 2 of your best D linemen, you lose your second best receiver, and what Pittsburgh like to do? They want to run the ball, man. I mean, yeah, you might have stopped the Giants last week. Okay, you held them, but I don't think Giants have ever had a good running game to begin with. This team, Pittsburgh, they like to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to keep running the ball. They're one of the most disciplined team when it comes to running the ball. So we're gonna see if they're gonna be able to bow up or not, but I don't think they will. I think Dallas takes I think they take the. I mean, the injuries, like I said, with a team coming to run the ball, and I think T.J. Watt gonna have a hell of a game. I ain't gonna lie. Might look, not to be funny, but it might look like that first game, Cavs against y'all. T.J. Watt about to eat. Not even gonna lie to you.
I think the score gonna be very similar to that. It has a very possibility. If Dallas offense can't get right, I'm gonna go Pittsburgh with this one as well. Like Shah said, Justin Fields come off his best performance, probably definitely of the year, probably as a pro. And that's kind of like that's what this season. Yeah, it was a pretty good game in a losing effort. It was a pretty good game.
They were getting blown out. I don't know if I would say it's his
came
best
back
game
though.
as a
That's
pro,
resilient.
They did come back.
He came back. He did come back. But no, this is what you wanted to see. If you're Pittsburgh and then you go into this offseason, you pick up Russell Wilson and then you go trade for Justin Fields and you say, well, what do you want to happen this season? Your best bet is saying, like, I hope the younger quarterback shows that he got what it takes to be a starter in this league. And so far this season, I'm not saying he's been great, but for them not to name him the permanent starter is kind of like what else does he have to do? Like I'm really interested in like what's going through their minds in the front office. Like what else do you want to see? He's managing this. Him and Arthur Smith have a good synergy. It seems like Arthur Smith's not making him do anything that he cannot do. You know what I mean? It's just worked so far. Of course, he's limited to turnovers a lot. I think on the season he only has like 1 pick, 1 fumble, a couple fumbles maybe. It's been pretty good for Justin Fields so far. I think that continues. This Dallas defense, I don't know. They should have, like you said, Chris, they should have lost last Thursday against the Giants. And I think that shit comes back around with this one. I don't see them winning this game. And they're on the road too, so that helps. Pittsburgh.
This is tough. Because do I want to go with a fifth fifth away team, or do I want to go with Justin Fields? But Justin Fields did have a good game last week. But Indy's defense is not Pittsburgh's defense, at least not right now, or not Dallas's. Well, I don't know. Dallas does have kind of a bad defense. Indy does kind of
They
have
have
a bad defense.
They currently have a bad defense.
Hey. And a lot of some of Justin's biggest plays came from a young guy, a rookie in Liatu Latu, and as well as Isaiah Land. They kind of took, instead of keeping the outside contained and edge, they kind of made some inside moves. He was able to get out of the pocket. That's how a couple of his touchdowns came. With Dallas having their guys missing on the edge, I think that we can see that happen to them as well. And without that stabilizer and Micah Parsons being there, maybe the matchup is going to be George Pickens versus Trayvon Diggs, which I'm interested to see how that goes because Trayvon Diggs has said last week he does travel, blah, blah, blah. He's one of the few corners that do travel now. So this is your time to travel. You don't have your edge rushers, and your defense is going to need some help. George Pickens is really the only person on the Pittsburgh offense that really does anything, outside the running game, which was kind of ineffective last week. But, and Najee left the game a little banged up as well. So we'll see how that goes. But Chris nailed it on the head. I think it's a TJ Watt game. With Brandon Cooks being out, they're going to obviously focus heavily on trying to get the ball to CD, which I don't know how great that's going to be for, going against that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So I think in a low-scoring game, I'm going to go with the Steelers at home. I do think that Justin Fields solidifies the starting position while playing a very bad game. But they're gonna be 4-1 at the same time. But I think I'm gonna ride with the Steelers in a low-scoring game. I'm gonna go like an ugly game, 15-10.
That's why I really think it'd be that first, like against the Falcons, like 18-10. I can see that. I can see it happening just like that. Just something ugly, just nasty.
Yeah, it's gonna be, but I mean, it's gonna be good to see the yellow and black, gold and black, however you want to do it, versus the star on the helmet. So, renewing a bit of a rivalry just with a new look. So, moving to the final game on Monday night, we've got the Saints, who will look like one of the best teams in the league the first couple weeks. Last week, them boys was actively selling.
Yes,
them boys was actively selling because what? First of all, why are you catching a punt on your
inside
2-yard line over the
what
shoulder?
What are you doing? What are you
First
doing?
Of all, second of all, Derek Carr, if you pump fake a screen, you probably should just throw it out, my boy. And but
not try to throw it again.
Not try to throw it again, but hey, that's neither here nor there. But the Saints still viable. They're obviously 2-2. Kansas City undefeated at this point, but like we said, they've have a bunch of injuries. We still don't know about the Rashee Rice and what the extent of that is going to look like. Is this a Xavier-worthy game? Is this a Travis Kelce game? With the Saints defense has been pretty good as well. So we'll see how that goes. But Saints versus Kansas City in Kansas City, Monday Night Football. Who you guys got?
In Kansas City, man, look, it's tough because, like you said, we already said that Kansas City, they just been hovering around mediocre. Like, it just hasn't looked good, and I really do like the Saints defense. But the Chiefs defense is pretty good. I'm not sure if the Saints will be able to move the ball that much. I want to fuck it. I'm gonna go upset. I'm gonna go with the Saints. I think they're going to lean on their defense. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I think they're going to not really rattle, but I think they're going to keep Patrick Mahomes contained. And Alvin Kamara, he's going to break off one. So I think I'm going to go with the Saints to get the Chiefs their first loss.
Okay. All right. So just like the Chiefs were dealing with injuries, so were the Saints. Last week especially, a lot of their guys came into it. A lot of guys were limited participation or did not practice at all. Chris Olave got hurt. He got hurt towards the end of that game. against the Falcons on Sunday. He dealt with a hamstring. He's been limited. So, and then Taysom Hill. That game against Atlanta, as soon as Taysom Hill was ruled out, the whole offensive scheme changed. I don't know if you watched too much of that, but like the first few drives, it was so much creativity, so much misdirection. You just didn't know what Taysom Hill was going to do. And you could tell like the game plan, obviously, throughout the week was to do that because he did practice fully all week. So the game plan, so when he left, that game plan got wrecked immediately. I think he's a big part of this team. And if he's not able to go, I think that's very huge for Kansas City. I got Kansas City at home in this one. I think they find a way. It's definitely going to be tough because, like you said, you only have Isaiah Worthy, Travis Kelce, Juju, Watson. You know, but I do think if the defense finds
Scott
a way
Moore,
to be
bro, your
effective.
boy.
Scott Moore's ass. I think the defense finds a way to be to make an impact in this game in a good way. We all know Derek Carr, like he's been having a good season, but he will give it up. Pause. Definitely a pause. He will sell though. Whether it's in the red zone or like he's liable to do it, and especially against Kansas City's especially against that blitz. You can tell, like the few times that we blitzed Atlanta, in Atlanta game, he really just back foot throwing that shit up. You don't want to do that against this team. You got to be more, you got to be more careful with the ball for sure. I think that Kansas City defense gets to him.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a tough one. Saints. At the beginning of the season, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Came out looking a little bit different just because of their, with the change in the offensive coordinator. Defense is going to continue to be stout. I believe that Patrick will probably throw another interception this week against that defense. So I'm going to add a caveat on this one, but I'm going with Kansas City. Derek Carr obviously has a lot of experience against that Spagnuolo defense. And it always seems that they end up having kind of a shootout between the two. There, a couple times they have blowouts, but it seems like him and Patrick Mahomes always has a shootout, and Travis Kelce ends up making a play in the end to win the game for them. So I'm going with Kansas City, and it probably going that exact route where Travis Kelce. I don't know if it's going to go a shootout, but Travis Kelce makes the play at the end of the game. But if my caveat is if Willie Gay, who played last week but left the game against the Falcons, as well as Demario Davis, who didn't play last week against the Falcons, if either of them, with Willie Gay obviously being a former Chief, or Demario Davis come back, or both, I'm going to go with the Saints then, because I think they'll be able to contain Kelce a little bit more, especially with the cornerbacks have been sticky. They were sticky the entire game against the Falcons as well. So, it's a division game, so they know each other, so that they've been sticky the entire season though. And they've got a good solid 3, so I can see them kind of holding that Chiefs offense down. But I'm going to go a little low-scoring game, and then like I said, I'm not going to do the shootout. I'm going to go low-scoring game, Travis Kelce making a play in the end. But if one of those linebackers or both plays, then I'm switching to the Saints in an upset, and gives me 5 out of 6 for away wins, which the Jets kind of counts as an away win, but it kind of doesn't at the same time. But still,
That's fair.
Maybe this is the week that I'll catch up. We'll see.
Probably not.
We'll see. But yeah, man, that gives us a wrap for another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast. But before we sign off, we got to give a shout out. I am wearing my Georgia hoodie today. Got to give a shout out to that 17-year-old man, Ryan Williams. What a fucking play! Man. That man hit a dead leg spin move. Probably it was the most watched college football regular season game, I think, over the past decade. So shout out Ryan Williams. Also shout out freaking Travis Hunter. Dog. We don't talk about college football too much, but got to show them some love before we hop off. Is there anybody else you want to show love in the college game, or you guys want to just stick with those?
They made the plays.
We can stick with those.
Running back from Boise, man. Yeah, he a dog. He's yes, he's the fucking dog.
What's he got like how many yards he got through, like
13
800, 900
touchdowns.
yards? Yeah, like ridiculous. It's like every time he touched it, he's liable to go.
Yeah.
Shout out to him.
It's going to be interesting to see, as the rest of the season goes on, especially with the 12-team playoff. With those, it's going to be interesting to see the Heisman race because, you mentioned him, you mentioned Travis, and, Jalen Milroe. Obviously, he had a big win against Georgia. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, and if maybe even Shador sneaks up there with Colorado having the biggest win of the prime era. But it's starting to heat up. I think today is the last day that we will be without football until next year. So every day until after today, I think there's a football game that's going to be played. So we're getting into the heat of it. We'll get into our NBA games as the preseason starts next week. We'll catch y'all next week. Oh, it is this week. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. But yeah, we'll get into that preview. But we'll catch y'all next week.
Yes, sir.